my summer,
I'm sorry.
that's all right. You may know that I have my summer home in Portland, Oregon. And oh, Stephanie, okay. But these days, through the pandemic, I have been visiting virtually. So every time I have a chance to come to Portland and Oregon, I say, of course, I'll be happy to see all the new friends. So great to be here. Particularly, I am thankful for you to join after school during this difficult time. Your commitment. So we are going to have just a nice conversation. I'm not planning to do breakout groups and all of those. We're just going to have what I consider mature adult intellectual conversation. I hope. Scott, thank you for joining from your vehicle. May I start? Ready? And thank you. Okay, go. I'm going to propose some ideas that have been with me for a while. So it's about the phenomena and problems in science and STEM education. And this is motivated by journal. There is a NGSS special issue, to be short. And I'm going to do some name dropping because I'm not a big name, so I need some support of big names here. Okay, but I'm also going to mention Susan. So Susan, get ready. I realized that NGSS designed instructional materials is not a means to the research. The NGSS designed instructional materials is a research in and of itself, because we do not know what the instructional materials look like, and it's our artifact. Can you put your thinking on NGSS developed instructional materials? So I'm going to draw instructional materials, and that was a special issue. And then, and I was the guest editor. I'm dropping the name again. Okay. And then in this issue, we invited all the prominent people. What do you think? Brian Reiser, Joe Krychek, Danny Edelson, Bill Penuel, Kate McNeil, like the people who have been doing the NGSS designed instructional materials. And in addition to that, we also invited the people who to write commentaries. So you can see Betsy Davis Jim Short is at Carnegie, Betsy Davis is at who writes about the educative instructional materials for teachers and educators. And here is Helen Quinn, and there is Tricia Shelton and all that. The reason I'm going to start with Helen Quinn, but before then, I would like to ask Susan to say something about your accolade. Go ahead.
I just wanted to share that the unit that we have developed here at Portland Public Schools, a second grade NGSS unit, Seed, Scat, and Habitat, was reviewed by Achieve and received an NGSS design badge. So I just wanted to share that will be open source and public and available for anyone to use.
Well, I didn't mean to include these two slides, but hearing Susan, I have to include these two slides because my main motivation of including these two is not really name dropping, but it's because any research endeavor, including curriculum development, should be part of a practice. It has to be practitioners being part of, because this is where it happens, and I'm a strong advocate. So that's the main reason that Susan and I changed it to include that. Congratulations, and it has to come from the field to inform the educators, including all the others. So congratulations.
Thank
you. Was somewhat. It was the motivation of Helen Quinn, the chair of the framework document, and it's the good work is spreading out. So that was the motivation. Again, congratulations. I'm so happy. So happy for you.
Okay, We were wondering if we should be seeing your PowerPoint because we're not seeing that on our screen right now.
I think our life is unmute yourself, show the PowerPoint. That's our life these days. So here is a Journal of Advanced Teacher Education, and then here is me talking about the Helen Quinn. And that's when I was talking about the NGSS design badge and as curriculum materials being part of research. So we are going to start. These are the 3 topics. And again, we are going to have a simply nice conversation, right? Science and STEM instructional shifts and example research program and propose the future approaches. And I'm going to talk a little bit fast so that I can cover and have some time for Q&A. Now, we have been thinking about this framework in NGSS, and this is a shift. So traditionally, Brian Reiser would say, science and teachers and scientists say, this is a science, kiddos, you have to know science. If you ask the students about what they are learning, they will say, I don't know. The teacher tells me to do this, right? There is no ownership and agency. When we were doing the framework and the NGSS, so the main mantra, the philosophy of the contemporary approach was it's all students are making sense of phenomena and designing solutions to problems as scientists and engineers. That's a contemporary. So I think of it as a 2010, before reading about science, after doing science. Now, when we talk about the instructional shifts for contemporary approaches based on the framework and the NGSS, these seem to be 3 instructional shifts that students are making sense of phenomena or problems by engaging in 3-dimensional learning, and there is a blue practices and green cross-cutting concepts and orange discrete core ideas, and their understanding evolves over time as the students build a coherent understanding. There is an agreement, a consensus on these 3 instructional shifts. Now, here is something that I was always wondering until I read Helen writing it, and I said, okay, thank you, Helen. So when you read Helen's passage here, she said that all papers agree on, meaning all the papers, invited papers, agree on the centrality of a designing units that have an internal coherence around the driving questions about phenomena that students can relate meaningfully to their lives and experience. Listen, look at this. While the framework does not discuss this feature of a curriculum design, the framework does not talk about phenomena. The word phenomena appears, according to Ted Willard, 104 times, but it never says that students are doing phenomena. These papers stress that engaging students in learning to use science and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts, as well as apply the different core ideas in science and engineering starts with engaging them with a phenomenon that raise the questions that they wanted to explore. But the framework does not discuss this feature. Did you know that? I always was wondering about, So when you read the framework is really about disciplinary core ideas and then learning progressions of K through 12. The closest that the framework comes close is the question like, how can one explain the structure and properties and interactions of a matter? How do particles combine to form the variety of matter one observes? Those are questions, but are they really like questions for phenomena? No, this is a science question. So when you think about these 2, framework and the NGSS are students are engaging in 3-dimensional learning and their understanding deals coherently through learning progressions. But then where does it come from? It's actually added later. You may read the framework with the lens of, it doesn't say the students are doing science as scientists and engineers do. I think this is what happened. This is my conjecture. How did it come about? But the most important. So when you think about the phenomenon-based science, we do have a multiple theoretical and conceptual approaches to science instruction. So you can think of a project-based learning, like a problem-based approach of designing solutions. There is a place-based approach of designing, solving problems in local context in my own home and community. There is a storyline approach. I would say that these research programs have provided us support to saying, well, think about this. So if we're doing three-dimensional learning and learning progression, it's a basically fancy way of learning science, but it's still learning science. And the question is, for what? For what? It's just a fancy way, but for what? I think that all these project-based learning, problem-based learning, the students are doing science and engineering, not students are learning science that is given to them. I think that's what happened. It would have been an interesting symposium or conference to say, where did that phenomena and problems come to existence? That's my thinking. But it's retroactively after the framework. So why do phenomena and problems matter? Because the students are doing it, they make sense of here. Making sense of phenomena gives the purpose to science, because I'm doing science, I'm using science to make sense of. I'm using it in service of, rather than I am serving science. There is a compelling phenomena that students would like to figure out, and students have the agency of, I am doing science. I wanted to figure out. I think that's what happened. So this phenomena and problems to solutions have become really prominent, especially during the pandemic and after. Because during the pandemic, we couldn't be in school. So what do? Problems and phenomena at home and local context. It became much more prominent. Now with all the societal issues and questions and phenomena, challenges, it had become even more important. So this is why phenomena and problems have become so prominent, but it is an afterthought to the framework in NGSS. Are we cool so far? I think if you have figured that out, I think we can end the session. May I leave now? All right, I'm just kidding. All right, so that's why it started. And I was so happy when Helen Quinn said, the framework don't talk much about the phenomena, but it has become really important. All right, I made a case. Then in 2020, globally, something happened. There is an unraveling of all our lives, and the question becomes, then what? I know that we have been talking about the new normal, not going back to old normal. It's a different world. It's not the same. So what does it mean? So here is a challenge that I'm asking. While we maintain good science of a contemporary, but how do we move forward? I hope that you are with me so far. That's my phenomenon, actually. That's my phenomenon to you, with a solution for the problem. All right. Keep going. Interesting proposition, isn't it? But yeah, it's in the back has become so important. So here is example research program, and I'm going to use one that I know well. So it could have been something different, but all right, example research problem. Okay, good. So when I talk about the research program, it's not my work. It is, I'm speaking on behalf of many people from multiple institutions over at least more than a decade. Here's something that I would like to share with my thinking. If I, or if you say that I know something and I am speaking, then it becomes me. But if you say that I'm speaking on behalf of, I'm speaking for a good cause, then you are in service of, and we should do that. There is nothing to be good about the being shy and timid. when you have something very important to say. And I'm saying it as an Asian American woman who tends to be demure and soft-spoken because there is no room. If I'm so compelled and so motivated and so wanting to do something, then I have to speak it up on behalf of. So I'm speaking on behalf of all my colleagues for the good of the field because I feel that I have something important to say. I'm speaking to you with the same passion of speak up. It's not that you are speaking. You are speaking on behalf of, you are speaking for the good cause. All right. Then, so here is a local phenomena, and we thought that that's a good, like, it's a local is equity because students, it's a place-based. Local phenomena is also engineering because once I know the problem, I would like to solve the problem. So local phenomena is about me because it's I bring something, and then it's about me because I wanted to improve for my family and the community. So local phenomena has been such an important topic, and NSTA tells me that the special issue that I was the guest editor on local phenomena was the most viewed special issue during the pandemic because the people would like to know what does it mean to do local phenomena when we cannot go to school. That's how it has become prominent. So local phenomena. Here is a research and Susan, your second grade unit will be along with a garbage unit as an NGSS design badge on a cheat. I'm so happy. I'm really, really happy. It's really. So here is the, and then here is a shift one. Here's a phenomenon. We make a lot of garbage. And what happens to our garbage? And here is a local phenomena that is also sense making of all students. And it is also universal. So it's a local, but it is also universal. I emphasize universal in the sense that right now it's a global issues of the pandemic, global issues of climate change, global issues of sustainability. Now we are talking about global issues of something pox, a new virus. I just forget. Monkey virus. It's a global. It's a, okay. Africans in African continent say that we have had the monkey virus, but only now that Westerners are infected, it has become an issue. So there is a double standard. Okay. Shift two, the students are doing sorting, and I'm not going to go into, and they're using. There is a one point that I would like to say though. So here is, this is something that I learned as I was working with the Stanford group. They will say that because the students are using language and it is a language intensive, but because the practice is language intensive, adults have a really bad tendency that whenever we do something new or whenever we do something combining two things, we say intensive and then we automatically say demanding and challenging. I don't know why we do that. Instead, you could say that students who don't get it have alternative ways of getting what they deserve. If it's using a lot of language, it doesn't have to be vocabulary language. Well, they have opportunities to use a language, and by using language, they learn language. This is another way that I think of. We already have something called here is a norm and here is a reference. And anyone who does not have the norm or reference is limited because you don't meet the norm. So adults, I know, kiddos, educators, I know better. Experts, I really do know. And authority, I'm the only one. And the rest of you don't. I think we just have this very bad attitude of, I know you don't, I'm the norm, you don't. I think we should completely change it. But instead of saying, you don't, I should have said, I wanted to know what you think and show me what you got. And we work with what you have. That's another key point that I So I think of asset very differently. Not I have it, you don't, and I'm giving it to you. No. Show me what you have and start from what you have. I think in teaching there is a savior syndrome or something. I know you don't, and I am going to save the problem. No, I think that's really just a bad thing. Okay, so I'm moving on. Language intensive, it's not challenges, it's opportunities to do. And then students are doing, so here is another way to think about learning progression. Then, so students are doing explaining, and here is something that we also need to think differently. What I'm learning is that in the past, traditionally, these are the standards. And I'm showing you the standards. And after we do the standards by doing science, then if we have time, we will apply. Again, this is, I know science, and then we do science first, and then I'm applying when we have time. This time, no, you are doing science. These are hidden. As you do science, you may need these science ideas. And by using science ideas, you learn science. The same thing about language. It's not that you need to know the vocabulary. No, you are using all means of communication. And by using language, you have to communicate, so you learn language. Thank you, Stephanie, for nodding. I think we did it all wrong. I'm not saying these are not important. They are important. These are disciplinary knowledge that provide the affordances to explain. But it's not that these are things that you should know because you don't know. It's not that. You have a great ideas that you bring. Let's work from what you have. And by using the ideas that you have, you will learn these things. So every time I think of these, I always think of, I think I need to flip it. If I flip it, that makes sense. So I am really, shift is that fancy word. I think of it as a flip, just flip it. And then if that makes sense, flip it. I think that's what we have to do. You know, all the things that societal upheavals of racism and all that is that too. We need to flip it. It's not we do and we, no, people have. It's the same idea. All right. Are we having a good conversation so far? My English is my second language, so I'm trying to make sense of it in plain English. I could have done plain Korean too. Plain. You can see that I have this, I tend to, as a point, I tend to use my limitation as a strength. English is my second language. If I cannot explain in plain English, that means I don't understand. And that means if you cannot explain to me, you don't understand. Help me understand. And that's when we say that you use all the jargon, but I don't understand a word of what you're saying. Can you put it in plain English? That's what's really important. If we have done it with the children, then we have, anyway, so here comes a traditional school science, Helen, also introduces a phenomenon of demonstrating laboratory experiment. Usually these are very specific isolated events or processes, like specifically demonstrate the science to be learned. Too often, the phenomena and the details of them students are expected to attend to are neither approachable nor meaningful to students, having no apparent connection to experience and interest for students. They were another level of extraction of why are we doing that? Why are we measuring it? So phenomena could be, here is an example that I'm realizing, whoops, because I am the traditional, I was before 2010. And then I am contemporary. through the NGSS, and I'm pushing for the future. So I am an example of the traditional before 2010, the contemporary after 2010, and then future since the 2020. I am. So I am very aware of how these are different. Here is an example. Remember baking soda and vinegar? Cool. There is a new substance and the balloon expands and whoa, cool. There is a new substance and chemical reaction and all measure the balloon and all that and conservation of matter. And the students, some students will say, cool, fun, next. Can you explain it? Nope, okay. Even those who can explain, what do we do with it? I learned about chemical reactions, but so what? What? If we have time, let's apply to rust on bicycle. So what? I don't have a bicycle. So what? It's that. So what? Only nerds like you got so excited about science and I wanted to do science. But most people, science, it doesn't have any meaning to me. So this is what helped. You can think of it as a phenomenon, but phenomenon for what? So here is students are doing. Now, this is a flip. In the past, students learned about the vinegar soda and baking soda vinegar because this is a classical experiment to demonstrate the chemical reaction, a new substance, a conservation of weight. I mean, I'm using weight of young children. Then what did you do? I learned the science, but then what? I don't know. This time, I smell the garbage. It's a new substance, but the weight in the closed system remains the same. Why? Well, let's do an experiment to figure out why. So it serves a purpose to explain, but not the purpose for the scientist. Fascinating, isn't it? So when a principal comes in and do this one, I know what it is. And cool. Well, it's not I know what it is. The important thing is, what is this for? To learn science, but to figure things out why something happens. So it's about the purpose. So what? Like that. It's a student. All right. So storyline is then here is doing an overtime. This gives a very new definition of a lesson. In the past, we tend to think of a lesson as a lesson about science concept, a lesson that starts with something, do an experiment and end and learn a science concept. That's a lesson. It's a very defined set of a science knowledge. When you do the phenomenon, the lesson is let's figure out something smaller phenomenon. Let's figure out another phenomenon that is leading to. So a lesson is not a 45-minute lesson. A lesson could be 3 class periods to explain what is the smell. It just because we are not serving science discipline anymore. We are serving to phenomenon. So there is no sense of one lesson as 45-minute lesson. So this is why I am sort of afraid of using lesson plan. If we think of a lesson plan as a 45, it just does not suit. If we think of a lesson as a sub-phenomenon, then it cuts across class periods. Are we okay so far? We haven't even gotten to fun part yet, I know, but I thought that would be important. So here is garbage unit, physical, diagrammic, but students do not know that composition, decomposition happens. So we are using computational model. If I just snuck in one thing about language. Here is a language that is, we think of, what would it be? Okay, so here, we're talking about conservation of weight. basically, the simple idea is that even though the banana and orange have disappeared, vanished, the weight stays the same. Weight is conserved. Conservation of a weight. It's just like that. Conservation of a matter. Conservation of energy. So what we consider conservation of matter starts from weight is the same. That's the main idea. And then language becomes a fancier, more sophisticated. But the idea is the weight is the same. Conserved, conservation, decompose. Orange and banana have disappeared, vanished, or they have decomposed. The decomposition of orange and banana. That's how language goes. But the foundation is idea. All right, so students cannot see the decomposition. And we are going into science. So there is a microbe, my agent, colliding the banana solid, changing to banana gas. Students are explaining that as they are doing it, the weight stays the same, meaning conservation of weight. It's the same banana, it's the same substance. That's it. This time students are giving the command, do this, do that, eat it up. No. It's called the agent, actually. It's my agent. I know it's my agent. The agent is carrying out my command. So we thought that that's great. It's engineering. Here is, does it matter if I drink tap water or bottled water? And engineering design is how do we solve the plastic pollution so that the plastic bottles that do not harm ocean animals. And we are doing it like that. Here is a social media. Students are saying social media. People are drinking water from plastic water bottles and pollute. But if you drink from water fountain, there is a 25% chance that those people will convert to using water bottles, not plastic bottles. So as they do, flatten the curve. So we were very, very excited. We're doing engineering using computational model, and students are doing like that, flatten the curve. Don't pollute the earth. We're just about ready, seriously, March. We're thinking of doing a study just on that engineering unit on plastic polluting animals. But that's when this happened. So our research was completely gone. You can see the 5th grade students are doing it just like people are doing in the Washington Post. I know that everybody has done it. So the point is this, now I'm getting into it. This is our reality. Pollution is our reality. It's air pollution, water pollution, food pollution, all kinds of pollution that are affecting minoritized communities disproportionately more. And then this just have highlighted, accentuated the societal issues that there were all there, but it just has come to the surface. So using this idea, we did a pollution of plastic bottles, and then Washington Post virus. Our current work is a computational model of a middle school. So students explain underlying causes of disparities in COVID-19. Causes include overrepresentation of racial and ethnic minorities in vulnerable housing arrangements. So if you have 10 people, 20 in crowded housing and community, can you do 6 feet apart? If you have frontline work to go out to work, can you stay at home? So students are doing the computational models, so you can see spheres are more harmed, these spheres. So you can see there is spheres of one, like me living alone. I don't have to worry about 6 feet apart because I don't have anyone 6 feet apart. Now, here is also, when you do the computer simulation model is done that the pyramid people are moving much farther away. The spheres of one person living, I stay home. So the infection of spheres infected, and there is another, we don't have, okay. That I living alone and staying at home has very limited chance of being infected compared to those people who live in overcrowded housing and essential workers who go far in and out. So we are asking students to design solutions. I actually saw middle school students talking about and doing it on their own, and the discussion was really humbling, students saying. Now, before then, we also do the data science. Right now, in the world, as of 2 hours ago, we have 6 million people dead, infected. When you look at the US data, it's over 1 million. US is a way overachiever. We have about 4 times more compared to our population in the world. There is US per million, Canada, like that. And then there is a CDC guidance of, so it'll say stay apart and all that. But what you realize is that this is where I say science is necessary, but science is not sufficient. We cannot say follow science. We have to think of people who are affected first. I think all the people, scientists who say stay at home, didn't give enough of people who could not stay at home, 6 feet apart. We didn't give enough, and that's why it has caused all the mistrust and all of those when even the vaccines came. There is a pause of question, but I'm going to continue. May I continue? There will be some. May I continue?
Okay, there is just one question in the chat, and it was from Sarah, who asked what the modeling program that you had in your slides that the students were doing were creating data from.
They're having a lot more like a NetLogo and other programs. The one that we are using is a StarLogo Nova.
Okay.
At
Thank
MIT.
you.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time, what it is called? We put it in the chat.
StarLogo Nova, SLN. If you, actually, we do have the computer simulation model that you can play. Send me an email. And I tried it with my undergraduate students, and we tried it with the middle school students. It's really cool. Okay. Oh, by the way, middle school students, they say that, well, there is no death in the model. They all recover. There are some people, unfortunately, who are not with us anymore. So students created a coding system of death. They designed it. All right. That's for the question. Thank you, Sarah. So I'm going to propose the future approaches, and would like to have a little bit of time. So here is a traditional that we talked about and contemporary. So here is my realization. So we started with what happens to our garbage by visiting virtually to a landfill. And we ask the students to sort the garbage, and we ask the students to make landfill bottles as a simulation. So you can see a landfill has become a landfill in the classroom and landfill contained. So in a sense, by doing the phenomenon, we have made a societal challenge that disproportionately impacts of minoritized communities into classroom phenomena and sanitize them. So my thinking is, if I were to do the unit again, you can complete my sentence, right? I don't need to complete my sentence. So while we are doing the contemporary approaches of what happens to our garbage through NSTA, and I include what were the scab lands formed, that's the Jen Whitten's unit on erosion and that. So Portland, Oregon is strong with science innovations. So here is a part, and this is it. So Jen Whitten did one unit on how were the how were the landscape formed along the east coast of Oregon, and then Rita Genosek extended into a full-blown unit. That's what it is. So I'm highlighting it to my Portland, Oregon colleagues to give a credit. Then what about the future then? Here's my question to you. So here's a traditional, cool, but I don't know why we do it. I learned the science. If we have time, we may apply it, but it's in service of the science. Contemporary, ooh, that smell. I need to explain smell, and I'm doing this because now I need to know this science core idea to explain where the stinking smell comes from. So it's in service of explaining the phenomenon of garbage. The question is, what about the future? Can we go to societal challenges of why a landfill is, and what about then climate change and all the societal challenges? The reason I'm saying is because I saw the statistics, it's something like that African-American community died of COVID 3 times more than white. The same of a Hispanic community. I think it might be even higher for Native Americans who don't even have the access to clean water. So if you think about that, if we had addressed minoritized groups as a priority, who died disproportionately higher, then we would have reduced the gap, but we would also have reduced the death for society overall. Am I communicating? It's not for the minoritized groups, it's the whole society, because the entire society has been disproportionately affected. Just to do math proportionally. If we had addressed that issue, it would have been part of the solution for society. So here is shift for the future. While we are carrying on the current of doing, but we also carry on the future. So here comes, I think I am, okay. I'm going to, 15 minutes, I have about 5 more minutes. So I am going to, don't do chat. So traditionally science for a select few to become scientists. Contemporary science and engineering for all students to make sense of phenomena and problems like a scientist. Future. Now you can see it's a science before. Now it's a science and engineering according to the framework. It's a science and engineering. This time it's a STEM, because we need a data science, we need a computer science, we need a multiple STEM disciplines to provide the solutions for complex challenges. So I'm going to ask a couple of you to unmute yourself. Complete the sentence. STEM for all students to do what? They will become what?
I would say to be innovators and creative problem solvers and come up with the solutions of huge problems in their community and in the world.
That's one.
STEM for all students to examine disparities in their communities.
Two.
In the chat, Patty wrote, STEM for all students to see themselves as scientists who can apply their skills in any problem-solving task at home as well.
So I think that's where we have seen moving from science and science engineering to make sense of what is that smell from garbage to why do we have landfills in certain communities? So this is why I'm asking the field to think about now what? It has become I don't expect it will jump ahead and go full force, but at least it's something that we make some inroad. To be very honest, I don't consider that we are going to talk about the landfill and COVID the whole year. That will be very depressing. But just something to learn to think about. So here is, I am trying to propose justice-centered STEM education where we address not just phenomena, but challenges that affect not just all, but particularly some. And then to address those societal challenges that are pressing, we're talking about all forms of climate change. And I hope that you're not going to have orange sky too much this summer, like apocalypse. I hope not. So we need multiple STEM subjects to solve problem. And then just as solutions are not just the fun solutions, but solutions that are societally impactful. So I'm going to just say 1 minute and we do it. So last time I was virtually in Portland, Oregon, I said I contacted Secretary of Education, Dr. Miguel Cardona, while he was being confirmed, and I sent him an email, and he sent to Oregon. I do have record, and then his office, and now he's being confirmed. Okay, I'll wait. About 3 months later, when he was confirmed, I said I'm back again, and then they said okay. So I met with his office person, and I said. The person said, "Oh, these are the positions available," and I said, "No, I'm not changing my job. I wanted to volunteer. I wanted to serve." And they said, "Oh, we don't have a service positions and we don't have the mechanism." So I put my name. I thought it's a real. At least they responded to me right away. I'm not looking for a job. So this, I haven't forgotten. So I did something different. Now, call to action for science education, the consensus report says a building up. And this call to action in science education, this time we're not talking about science education. We're talking about, so action area 1, elevate the status of the science education. Recommendation 1, the White House with the leadership from the Office of Science and Technology Policy, OSTP, should act to raise the profile of the science education and elevate the importance of access to high quality science learning opportunities for all students across K through 12, especially OSTP. That's what is White House. Okay. And the second is that Congress should do. And then third is the Department of Education should do. So I have reached out to New York State Department of Education, and I'm working quite well with my state department. And the national stakeholders in mathematics and all that. The reason why I became so upset is because there is this alphabet soups of OSTP, White House. There is a White House PCAST. Then there is a National Science Foundation, National Science Board. And when the OSTP was formed by the new administration, I thought that there must be a science or STEM educator who represents the field. Because it's about the COVID and climate change, and there has to be a science or STEM educator. I looked through all the lists. I did not see any STEM educator. Actually, I didn't see any educator. I got so upset. This time, this is not State Department of Education of Miguel Cardona. It's a White House. Not even a National Science Foundation. These are all geophysics and astronomer and all of the Nobel Prize, but no STEM educator. You can see so I said, I'm going to do something. So I'm going to do something, and what did I do? So I said, American Educational Research Association is the largest educational association, and I was serving on the council. And I said, we should invite the top White House OSTP and top director of the NSF. I proposed the idea. And actually I did. Here is the president office of, and she's the acting director after Eric Lander resigned for his bullying behavior of both men and women. So she's a deputy director, and she's now the acting director in the absence. And she's a social scientist with a charge of a broadening participation. She's currently acting along with Collins, the former NIH, doing cancer. That's White House. And here is, we affectionately call him Punch, the director of NSF. And here is Felice, who is the executive director. So I coordinated and I moderated it. I did. If we wanted to say something, let them hear it. I was even more pleased when I did my tweet. She said, looking forward to joining AEI Research Leadership with NSF Director, this important discussion of STEM equity and how to educate, inspire all who aspire to participate in science and from skilled technical work to basic research and more. I was just pleased that when she retweeted that with a quote. And then after that, so here is me on the stage. Here is the NSF director, and here is the acting director of OSTP White House. And then AERA said a fire conversation, and she said, I like it. Again, I said, a way to go. And then I was attending a meeting, the advisory committee meeting at National Science Foundation. And then someone said that, okay, the National Science Foundation director is just talking about your AERA fireside chat with Oki and Felice. And I attended a meeting just last week, and he said, Dr. Lee, thank you for coordinating that meeting. That was a fantastic, with Alondra Nelson from White House OSTP. So that was doing something. And thank you for allowing me with my enthusiasm and passion. So I am done. We have at least several minutes. And all 16 of you have been staying, so thank you.
Thank you, Oki, so much for your inspiring talk today. And I'm sure that many have questions, but I do want to just, in the comments, I don't know if you've been following it, but we're just so excited that you are this cheerleader for science education, and then the ties to social justice and the thinking that's come out of COVID and the climate crisis, that science is part of the solution, and we as teachers and how do we make our students and us part of the solution of changing our society? And I think this is just so inspiring for me to hear you to talk about this today. And I'm leaving energized of what I can do to be part of this work. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from any of our attendees here for Oki? While we have our wonderful Oki here too.
No risk, no magic. It's I never thought that I would be speaking with the director of the White House OSTP and NSF.
Mhm. And to bring them together to talk about science education, that's just wonderful.
I have a question. Who's in control of the money for education for science for us? You know, we get trickled down with hardly any money. We have to do our own. It's just, it's so huge and we do our little part. And I'm just wondering, you know, if we want government help, who's in control of this money and the politics going on?
That is the White House OSTP. That much I know. But in terms of delegating the education and funding, I was, you make, I was listening to the Secretary of Education keep talking to Washington Post about COVID and all that, but there was no question about education funding for STEM. No. This is what really surprises me, that when you think about $1.2 trillion of infrastructure, that's all engineering. It's a building bridges and airports and then cybersecurity. It's all engineering, right? Someone has to do the work. Maybe high school students graduating, right? Now, also in the House and Senate, there is a bipartisan bill in the magnitude of $250 billion to support basic research in science and technology, because US does not have any sophisticated computing chips. It's a Taiwan. I was just blown away. Intel does not make, you can see I'm following the Washington Post and the Secretary of Energy, Secretary of the Transportation, Secretary of Labor, Secretary of, I mean, just wanting to know. And so when I heard that thing requires 8 sophisticated chips, and how many do we make in the US? Which area makes it 60 to 70%? Taiwan. This is why Biden is in the media talking about, in the event that China invades Taiwan, we will send the troops. It's different from Ukraine because we don't have any. Korean company Samsung makes 6 to 8% of the chips. Taiwan makes. Do you see it? That's how strategic it is. Without it, artificial intelligence and robotics and all that. So that's why $250 billion by bipartisan, because we have no choice. But we don't talk about STEM education. I don't understand. I volunteered to serve on the OSTP, White House OSTP. Nobody listens to me, at least I volunteer. Why not? No risk, no magic. Say it. But you get the idea.
This problem is so systemic. It's in our districts, and I know that other teachers and OSTA and others at this meeting are probably experience similar things. But during COVID and the heights of what, a science and social justice issue, the 2 classes that were considered optional to teach were science and social studies. Like, we basically, for a year, the district was saying, if you don't teach science and you don't teach social studies, and you just teach reading and you just teach math, and that's all we need to do. And just exactly what you're saying, that the big issues in the world have to do with the subjects that there's no accountability measures around. And it was neat to see that you were asking for that, because we are seeing a decline in minutes and time spent in science, especially at elementary, in Oregon, especially. I don't know other states that are here if you're seeing the same thing, but it's a real problem in K-5.
So Sarah, during the fireside chat, I was about to say there is no STEM educator on the White House, and I volunteer to serve. I was about to say it, but I was not allowed to say it to be too confrontational, so I did not say it. But it's not recorded, that's good. But that was a real motivation